Good morning. This is VirtualPBX Dash Admin Training. Excuse me. Just getting started here, so we'll wait for everyone to get situated. And to make sure that this is broadcasting properly. All right. The training lasts about an hour and a half, give or take, depending on load times. We do record these trainings, so you can always come back if you can't stay for the whole time. And this also allows you to share the link with other staff members who may need to be system admins on your account. Please feel free to use the YouTube chat feature to ask questions about any feature as I'm going over them. If you look down in the description notes, you'll see some links to some other videos that we have on our YouTube channel. The first link is for our business SMS series, which is, I think, something like 10 videos now, but basically covers everything about SMS registration and some other related topics. The other three are for other features that don't show up well here during the training, so they have their own separate videos. But with that, let's go ahead and dive in. So here you see our Dash login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. To get logged in, we need three pieces of information. The first is your username, which is your email address. This should be in all lowercase letters. Then your password, which should have been emailed to you. This is case sensitive. And then lastly, the account name, which is typically your company name or organization name. And it is not case sensitive. Now, if you can't get logged in or you didn't get your email or the password emailed to you, down here just above the sign-in bar, there's a forgot your info link. So you can click on that. It flips a box over. All right, we still need your email address. All right, that's your unique identifier. Again, it should be in all lowercase. Then down below that, there's two fields. We only need one of these to be filled out. So we need either your account name or a phone number that's on the account, right? And that's a customer-facing phone number. Then you just click on the reset password bar here at the bottom. This will send you an email, right, to that email address you put up here. It's going to have a link that logs you directly into your user account page where you can change your password. If you try to navigate off of that page or after you finish changing your password, the system will log you back out and bring you back to the sign-in page. So here you would put in your password. You have the option here for Remember Me, and then click on Sign In. Now, I'm using a test account that I log into on a regular basis. In fact, I was just logged in a little bit ago. So the system is taking me directly to my dashboard page, right? So this is your account snapshot. If it's your first time logging in, you actually get taken to your user account page. You can always get to your user account page by clicking on your name. That's at the top of the page, just to the right of center. And you click there. And here, basically, it's a huge pop-up that takes you to your user account page. Right, so here's where you would change your password to something you would remember versus something the system created for you. You can also change your time and date format. You change your time zone and language. Now this is just for yourself, right? Because you're as a system admin over here on the left, you can click on account. So you can change the time zone and language for the entire account, right? So if everyone's based in the same time zone, then you can set that up there. Add-ons, this is a new feature. This will allow you to add on different features going forward. Right now, the only add-on feature that's available is text forward. Some of these add-ons may increase your bill, so that's something to be aware of. Just depends on what plan you're on to start with. And you can always reach out to our account services team to verify if a particular add-on will increase your bill or not. Down below here on the left, you have your billing portal. This basically is how you would go about changing the credit card on file. And then lastly, the option to cancel the account. Now, any system admin can get here, so you want to be careful about who you give access to this, but basically you follow the on-screen instructions to cancel your account. And then once you're done here, click on close. That closes that big pop-up, and you're back on your dashboard. One thing I also point out, on that first time you log in, right, so on the account page, the dash wizard pop-ups will come up, basically telling you what certain things are. Those pop-ups will also come up here on the dashboard page, and then on the users and groups page. So if we look over here towards the left-hand side where it says VirtualPBX, down below that, it says dashboard, right? That's the page we're currently on. And then these other tabs going down, these are other features of Dash, most of which are included on basically every plan. The main ones to be aware of that aren't are auto attendance, which is plan specific, the text forward, which is that add-on, and I believe that is it on the left. Now, going back up towards the top, so where it says VirtualPBX, go to the right, that's where your name is. You can click on that at any time to get to that user account tab so you can change your password, for instance. For most of us, to the right of your name, you have a D&D toggle for Do Not Disturb. You click on it, it moves the toggle to the right and makes it white, and that means it's on, right? So that means you're not accepting calls, right? Calls to your user go to voicemail, and people won't, and other staff members won't be able to transfer calls to you. They have to transfer to your voicemail. If you're assigned to the call center, right, or the ACD queues, you won't have this toggle, right? Once you've been assigned to the call center, that removes the D&D toggle because D&D and call center don't work well together. All right, little phone icon here. This opens up a new tab and takes you to webphone.virtualpbx.net. If you've added a web phone to your user, you can then log into this page. Just use your Dash login information, right? So the same email, password, and account name. And this allows you to use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. You obviously need some speakers or headphones and a microphone. This only works on the desktop versions of those two browsers, right? The mobile versions of those browsers are not supported. Well, chat bubble here, this will open up a new tab and take you to virtualtext.app webpage. Has its own login information, and this is where you handle your texting. You can also use the app on your phone as well. Again, this would have to be a feature that's added to your user to make proper use of. Little question mark icon, this opens up a chat bubble at the bottom right of your screen, and you can converse with our support team to help you set up a particular feature and or ask any questions. The three horizontal line icon here, this is the menu icon. This takes you to other Dash features. The majority of our training will be here on the dashboard, which is that top left item, but we'll touch on these other subjects as we get to them. Again, that's going to be towards the very end of the training. And then the arrow to the right icon, that's the log out, right? So it logs you out of the system. Now here in the middle, I have total users. I have 10 users on my account, right? These are people who make and receive calls. Generally speaking, our plans are on a per user basis, right? So the more users you have, the higher your bill is going to be. Next up, I have total devices. I have 22 of them. And there's a breakdown here. Softphone, software application. Uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. Right? This includes the VirtualPBX softphone or any other third-party softphones you might be using. This next bucket here is cell phones, right? So you can add a cell phone number or a landline number as a device on your Dash account, and we can send calls to that device. Now, when we send a call to another phone number, right, when you pick up on that number, you can't transfer that call to another staff member. Right? It's an endpoint, right? So you either have to handle all the issues or the customer has to call back, or we have to take a message to have whoever they need to speak to call that customer back. Web phone, that's that Chrome or Firefox device, right? Again, it's a VoIP phone. If you don't know already, VoIP stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. That's just using your internet connection to make and receive calls. So both the soft phone and the web phone are VoIP devices. And next up is a SIP phone. This is a physical phone, right? So SIP is a subtype of VoIP phones, right? So VoIP is a general term. SIP is a specific protocol that these phones use, right? So when you're shopping, you want to make sure it's SIP compliant or compatible. Generally speaking, they connect via an Ethernet cable to get to your router to get onto the internet. But beyond that, it acts like a normal phone. You pick it up, dial a number, you speak to the other person. Down here, I have unregistered devices. One, that means I've turned one of my devices off. It's still on my account, right? So if it's a VoIP device, it could still be being charged for, but otherwise I'm not using it. And if you know especially for VoIP phones, if you know you're not going to use it forever, like I don't want this on my account, you're better off deleting it from the account. Next up, total numbers. I have 13 phone numbers. Your account includes at least some number of phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. Now, if you go over your allotment, you're going to be charged on a per number basis per month. So if you just signed up with us, I believe that's currently at $1.99 per number. But again, you might want to verify that with our account services team, especially if you've been with us for several years. Then I have a breakdown here of assigned numbers and spare numbers. Spare numbers, right, counts towards your allotment, you're just not currently using it. Right? Whether it's because you took a number out of service because you had to downsize, which would be unfortunate, or for instance, you're about to expand into a new market, has a different area code and number, right? You have a storefront, for instance. So you're like, let me get the number ahead of time so I can start making all the marketing materials ahead of time. And then once in the service, I can assign it and make use of it, right? Assigned numbers, they're in use, right? Someone can dial those numbers and expect to speak to someone or leave a voicemail, join a conference, or be sending a fax. Right now, next breakdown here is USDID and US toll-free. US toll-free is actually US Canada toll-free, right? So 800 number, 888, all the way down to 833 currently. USDID, just US local number, right? So if you have a number in, say, Saratoga, California, USDID, just as if you had one in Saratoga, New York, both would be USDIDs. You can have international phone numbers on your account. If you would like to add one, you want to email our porting team, and that's PORTING at virtualpbx.com. They need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in. They'll let you know if that's possible and if there are any additional requirements, right? Those requirements would be based on the country in question. Some countries don't care. They say, okay, here, grab a number. Others, they want documentation, usually like a phone bill or like not a utility bill, sometimes like letters of incorporation, etc. It's going to vary from country to country. I have conference bridges, right? So I have 5 of my users are enabled to moderate or host a conference. Now, I can't enable that feature on a user until I've had a conference number added to my account. Over here towards the top right, I have this main number box. So I have 2 main numbers here. These 2 phone numbers behave the same way, right? They're going to the same location on my account. They're going to have the same main greeting. Conference number, I have the one conference number here. You can have multiple conference room numbers if you want. They're going to the same set of conference rooms. But everyone dials this number to join the conference. Whether they're your staff members, your clients, or your vendors, they all dial this number. They'll be prompted to enter the conference room number and then the PIN number. And the conference room number will be the extension number of the user that's hosting. The fax box number, you're allowed 1 main fax box number, and this is your inbound fax number. This also allows you to edit the fax box that's associated with this number, so you can have outbound faxing as well as who gets notified for an inbound fax. All right, the company directory, there's 2 links to the right, a CSV and softphone. CSV is just that, it's a CSV file. You open it up in your favorite spreadsheet program. It's going to have a list of your staff members, their extensions, and their primary devices. The softphone directory downloads a file and is for use with the VirtualPBX desktop softphone application, right? So if you're using our softphone app on a Mac or Windows PC, you would download this file, upload it to your softphone on your computer. It's going to show you the status of the other VirtualPBX softphones on your account, right? It'll be basically your contact list. You'll see your other staff members, right? Green means you can call them, right? They're not using their softphone. Red, they're not available for a call. Now, if you have staff members using multiple devices, you're not going to see the status of those other devices, right? So if my colleague Mike is on a call on his J-Link phone from my soft phone, I won't know that, right? I could call him and he might answer the call and say, hey, I'm on the other line, call me back, etc. VirtualPBX Store, this is a link that opens up a new tab and takes you to store.virtualpbx.com. And there you can order things like a VoIP phone. And then here we have the account realm. Every account has its own account realm. This is used for two primary things. The first is it's one of the three pieces of information you need to program or provision a third-party soft phone, whether that's you're using someone else's application or you're using those third-party credentials to program a physical VoIP phone. The other thing it's used for is to send a fax out. So on Dash, once you have your fax box set up, you can send a fax out without actually logging into your Dash account. You basically just open up your email that's associated with your user. You create an email like you normally do, right? In the to field, you put the plus sign, the number 1, area code and phone number, little @ symbol, and then paste in your account realm. Then you just need to attach a PDF or TIFF file. Okay? The system is not going to look at the subject line. It's not going to look at the body of the email, and it's only going to process one attachment. All right, so basically everything you need to be faxed needs to be in that attachment. Again, it should be a PDF or TIFF file. All right, we're going to go back up to here on this big blue bar, and we have caller ID just to the right of center. And when you click on that, it expands out. So this pull down, which unfortunately my software won't display, shows your main numbers, right? So there'd be only 2 numbers here. You select one of your main numbers, and that becomes your default number for, like, say, when your VoIP phones make an outbound call. That's the number that will display when they make an outbound call. Next up, you have the company caller ID name or CNAME. This is an optional feature. It allows you to enter up to 15 characters, including spaces. It counts spaces and special characters in that 15 that you can associate with your number. And then it wants company emergency information, all right, E911, wants a North American address. For our Canadian customers, where it says zip code, that's where you will put your postal code. And where it says state, that's where you put your 2-character province abbreviation. And then you click on Save Changes. Now, once you click on Save Changes, if you've entered information in the CNAM field here, that information gets sent to the other carriers that support this feature. It takes them up to 3 business days to update their databases/servers. Couple caveats you should know about CNAME. Right. First and foremost, not every carrier out there supports it, which means it's possible when you make an outbound call, your call can route through one of those carriers that doesn't support it, which means your CNAME information doesn't reach the destination. That receiving carrier, right, the last carrier, they have final say about what shows up on the phones on their network. So we send the phone number and the CNAME information. Their first option is to let it all through, right? Everybody's happy. Second option, the information comes through, said, we don't like your name information. We're going to look up that phone number under our own set of databases and input what's there instead. And then the last option, which is typically what your cell phone carriers do, is they see that information, they only pass through the phone number. The CNAME information does not reach the end. Unfortunately, we can't control what other carriers are going to put within the CNAME, right? We can only send out that information that we have associated with it. Like for the cell phone carriers, for example, most of them want to charge their subscribers an additional monthly fee in order to have that CNAME information show up on the cell phones. So when you test this, you probably do not want to test to a cell phone. Next up, we have hold music. And this would be your account-wide default hold music. You can upload your own file, a .wav or .mp3, up to 1 megabyte in file size. I recommend making to record in mono. That gives you a longer duration file, right? It's like a 1 megabyte MP3 is roughly 5 minutes. You can find the file on your device by clicking on the Browse button. Once you select it, click the up arrow icon, it uploads it and saves it. Now, what this means is when a call comes into your system, right, reaches your staff members, they pick up their VoIP phone, they talk to the customer for a little bit, and then they need to press hold on their VoIP phone. Once they press hold, that's when this media file will play, right? So it's after the call has reached a staff member. Now, ours is actually part of main number, and to fully set up your main number, you need to have users at the very least and devices. So let's go to users over here on the left, which is down here, little person at the desk. So here is our user page, right? Shows all your staff members here. People with the blue suit icon, these are system admins, right? So they can do all the stuff we've been talking about already, right? The gray person icon, that's just a standard user. A standard user, they can basically log in on via the website and get to their user portal, which means they can view their voicemails, they can see their call history, um, they can set up call forwarding. And depending on if you've added a fax box to them or conferencing, they'll have access to that as well. But beyond that, system admins, they have access to everything. Now up here at the top is where you would add a new user. Just click on that button there, and you have this form to fill out, right? First name and last name, the system just wants some type of character, right? You can put A and A or A and B, whatever. The email address used for login needs to be unique for each user, right? So you cannot reuse an email address for multiple staff members. This is how the system communicates with your staff members, right? So like if they have a voicemail notification, it uses this email address, right? Same with password resets. Under password, you create a password for the user. The main extension number, right? You can enter an extension number. I usually recommend making use of 4-digit extensions as that gives you the most versatility and allows for growth. You can enter any extension number you want. So this system started off with extension 1000. That's why it's suggesting to me that the next available extension is 1013. I can enter what I want. All right. By default, the system will create a voicemail box specifically for this user, right? It's intrinsically tied. So if you create the user, you added a VoIP phone, and it gets registered, that user can pick up their VoIP phone, dial *98. That will log them directly into the voicemail box you just created for them. The system will then walk them through creating a PIN number for their voicemail box, and then recording their name, which would be what the system uses for the PBX directory, and then walk them through creating their voicemail greeting. So basically the voicemail box is completely set up at that time. Here's your option to include them in the user directory. You just put a check mark here. You can always change that later. This option here is send emails to an alternate address. So if you want like the voicemail notifications to go to a different email address than the one that's used to log in for the user, you would click on this box here and then type in that different email address in the box provided. And you can always change that at any time. And the last option here, send credentials to the user, right? You put a check mark here. And once you click create user, that user gets an email, welcome them to their Dash account, give them the login information, etc. If you have to add multiple, create user and add another, right? We'll then basically refresh the box. Once a user is created, you can click on their name, right? So if necessary, you can change their name, right? Like someone changes their name because they got married. Then you have the option here to change their credentials. Right, so you can change their email address if necessary or their password. You also have the option here to have the system send them the password reset email, so that way they can change the password on their own. Here you can change their voicemail box PIN number. Just needs to be 4 digits and then save changes. Right. Here's your option to send emails to an alternate address, and then your option to be in the user directory or not. Over here, little person icon. This pull down allows you to change a user into an admin or an admin back to a user. Little clock icon here. This allows you to change the time zone for the user, right? So that way their voicemail timestamps are correct. The little flag icon here. This allows you to change the display language of the web pages for this user. You have English, French, German, or Russian. Ringing timeout, the default is 20 seconds, which is typically plenty of time to send calls to a landline or a VoIP phone. If you have a user that's only using a cell phone number, you're probably going to want to increase this to 30 seconds, maybe up to 45. Basically, it takes a little bit longer to route a call to a cell phone than to say a landline, right? When we send a call to a landline, that telecom company knows exactly where that phone is. Whereas when we send a call to a cell phone telecom, they have to find the cell phone first, then they can route the call. And that delay is why you might want a longer ring time. The extension box, right? Every user has an extension number. If you do not have an extension number on your first user, for example, you'd want to go ahead and come here and click where it says add an extension number to give yourself an extension number. And then here, you can add a phone number directly to a user. So you have add from spare or by new, right? So add from spare means you're using one of your numbers that's under your spare list, right? So if you click on this, it shows me the numbers I'm not currently using. I could click on a box in front of the one I want to use, click add selected, and then I would click on save changes. So now Ariel here has a phone number that goes directly to them. Now, by numbers is when you're adding a new number to your account completely. Right, you just click on by number. You have options between local and toll free. Toll free, right? You choose a toll free prefix you want, and you'll get a list of numbers that are available. And you can scroll down to keep adding more. Right, you would just click on add next to the number you like. You can scroll down and you can add multiple if you wanted to. Now, at this point, you haven't done anything, right? You haven't reserved the numbers or anything at this point. So if I walked away, and let's say, I got into a meeting, then I went to lunch, I came back. If I try to click by numbers after that, it's possible that it would fail, right? Because this list is what's referred to as a dynamic list, meaning you're actually competing with other people in real time. So once you decide on numbers you want, and let's say I don't want this one anymore, you want to click on by numbers right away. This is the point where you're actually getting the number, right? So now the system verifying it out, it was available, and then activating it and adding it to your account. And then you click on save changes. If we go to local, here you need to know the area code that you want to number in. And then you type in an area code, click on search. For any area code, including the toll-free prefixes, you can get this message, which is basically saying that there's no currently available numbers in that specific area code. The first thing you should probably want to do at that point, go to your favorite search engine and do a search for, in this case, area code 310 overlay. Right? This will tell you if there are any additional area codes that cover the same geographic boundaries. And then you would go back to search, and you can do a search for that overlay, right? So 310 and 424, excuse me, they share the same geographic boundaries within Southern California. This is around LA. So again, same process. You click add, and click by numbers, and then it goes to verify. Now you have this little gear icon here to the right, so you can set up the caller ID information for each number, right? So you can update the outbound CNM information and turn on the ability to accept inbound CNM. Right? So the information would show up on your staff members' phones. E911, each phone number can have its own E911 address. So if you have staff in multiple areas, you can assign the correct address to a particular phone number and then assign that to their VoIP device so that whenever they pick up their VoIP phone and dial 911, the appropriate address is transmitted to emergency services. Prepend is for your VoIP phone users. You can add text in front of the caller ID that shows up on their phone, so it gives them an idea of what the call might be about. Then if you want to remove a number, you first have to unassign it, right? And then save changes. So those 3 phone numbers now are spare numbers. I can go to my numbers tab, which I'll get to later, and that's where you would delete the number from your account, right? Remove it completely. Just unassigning it just makes it a spare number. Now, one thing to know, when you have a phone number that's directly on a user, like here, right, this phone number is available 24/7. It does not have hours of operation or holidays. So if you have a staff member who has a cell phone, they could get calls at any time from that phone number. Next up, your devices. So this is where you can add devices to a user. Add from spare would be you're reusing a device, right? So like, say Bob retired, but he had a physical VoIP phone. You can unassign it from Bob's user, and then you can then add it from spare and reuse it and assign it to a different staff member. New devices is how you would add a new device to your user. So first up is a SIP phone, right? So this is that physical hardware, right? Some of these manufacturers have a lot of models to choose from. Some have about a dozen, right? But you would find the make and model of the phone you want to work with. You give it a name, right? Bob's phone, break room phone, etc. and then the MAC address. The MAC address is unique to each device, typically a sticker on the back of the phone. If the phone's plugged in, you can also go to its status settings and get it there, or maybe its basic settings, depends on the manufacturer. And then you click on Create Device, right? And then you would click on Save Changes. So let's go down here to Dante. So once you've clicked on Add Create Device and Save Changes, click on the device again to bring up this basic settings box. Click on Advanced and go down to Miscellaneous. And where it says Allow Reprovision, click on Unlock. This box should then disappear, and then you click on Save Changes. That tells the system that, hey, this phone's about to provision itself. Now, in terms of our dashboard, you're basically done. You have to log into that phone's web user interface, right? Typically, that means getting the IP address from the phone, putting that IP address in the address bar of your browser. The computer and the phone should be on the same network to do that. And then you log into the phone's user interface, and you need to go to its auto provision section and put in a URL. Now, for the specifics of that, you're going to want to go to our support pages, right, support.virtualpbx.com, and do a search for auto provisioning. That's going to get you screenshots for these various manufacturers, so you know where to go, the proper syntax for that URL, and usually a couple settings to verify. Right. Once you go through that, you click Update or Confirm or Save, whatever the manufacturer chooses to use, and then you tell it to provision now or auto provision now. The phone's going to reboot a couple times, and then it will show up as a green device, and then you can make and receive calls. Oops. Now, once you've added the phone and it's working, you can also click here. For physical devices under Audio, under Selected, you want to make sure that G711U and G711A are to the right, and that just means you might have to click and drag, right? Click it here and then back here, but that's what you should show up by default. But if not, just click and drag them over and then click on Save Changes. And then here's emergency information, right? So you can select any of your phone numbers on the account, and if you have an address associated with it, it'll show up here, and then Save Changes. So whenever Dante dials 911 from his Yealing phone, right, this is the address information that gets transmitted to emergency services. All right. So next up, cell phone and landline, right? They're same feature here. You give it a name, right? So David Cell, and then you put the number +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then you click on Save Changes or Create Device, excuse me, and then you come down here and click on Save Changes. So if we click on it here, right? So again, here's the name, here's that +1 area code and phone number. Now, if I go to Advanced and Options, this is the default setup for a cell phone or landline. So what this means, call comes in, right? Rings to David's cell phone, right? When he picks up, he hears, this is a forwarded call. Please press 1. When he presses 1, he's telling the system, yes, he's there, and yes, he wants to take this call, right? Call connects, he speaks to the other person. That's fine for most people, right? That's an audio way to know, oh, this is a business call, right? Versus just ringing, you pick up, and the other person starts talking to you. Now, let's say, for instance, you have contracted out with another company that provides an automated answering service for your after-hours calls, right? So they give you a phone number. You would add that phone number as either a cell phone or landline on your account. But what you would want to do is come to the advanced options here, and where it says allow use of cell phone's voicemail, you want to put a check mark in front of that. So now when we send the call to this phone number, right? So your automated answering service, when that automated answering service picks up, we connect the call, right? There's no message about this is a forwarded call and pressing 1. It just says we hear pickup, call connected, right? So then your automated answer service handles the call. Now, if this is really David's cell phone and we have this checked, what can happen is call rings to David's cell phone. Let's say he's driving and doesn't have Bluetooth for whatever reasons, so he doesn't want to take the call, right? His cell phone voicemail picks up instead. With this setting in place, that's still a pickup tone. So we send the caller to David's cell phone's voicemail instead of the system voicemail box. Some people want that, some people don't. The other thing that can come up is this one here, keep original caller ID. So what this means is when a call comes through to David's cell phone, he'll see, like say customer Mary is calling in, he'll see customer Mary's phone number on his cell phone. If he's like me and doesn't recognize the phone number, he probably lets you go to voicemail. Right? Most because I got tired of telemarketers, etc. Now, what you can do instead is uncheck this, right? Click on Save Changes. So now when customer Mary calls in, instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number, he sees this number that you selected up here. Right? So hopefully you would recognize your own main number, and that would be a visual way to say, oh, this is a work call. Let me pick up. Excuse me. All right. Oh, so, oops. So next up is soft phone, right? So that software application that acts as a phone, right? Now, whenever you add a soft phone or a web phone to the account, you're going to get this warning message. Please make sure you read this at least once, if not multiple times. But basically saying, hey, there's a thing now, wireless VoIP technology, where your E91 address may not match where you're actually physically located. So please be aware of that if you dial 911. But then once you've done that, close, and now you get this big box. Now this setup here defaults you to a third-party soft phone, meaning you're using someone else's soft phone application, or you're using this information to program a physical phone because auto provisioning didn't work for you. So in this case, you would give it a name. You would copy and paste the SIP username. Click on the SIP password box so you can copy and paste it. Please do not change that. And then here's your account realm, right? Those are the 3 pieces of information you would need to program or provision your third-party application or device. You click on Create Device and then Save Changes. Now, down here, but below where it says View Configuration Guide, there's a toggle, right? It says Use Third-Party Soft Phone. You can click on that. So now it says Use VirtualPBX application. So then you still just need to give it a device name, but then you click on Create Device and then Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, Dante here will get an email saying, hey, his VirtualPBX soft phone is ready. It's going to give him his username, his password, and download links to download the app to his preferred device. This is the only way to add a VirtualPBX soft phone to your account. You have to do it on the user page directly here under their devices box, right? If you try to add a soft phone on the devices tab, which we get into shortly, you only have the option to use the third-party soft phone. Web phone, again, you get that warning message. You just need to give it a name, click on Create Device, and then Save Changes. And then Dante here can go to webphone.virtualpbx.net, log in using his dash information, and then he can use Chrome or Firefox to make and receive calls. All right, user features. First up, you have caller ID number. Up here is where you turn it on. And then you select the number on the user, click on Save Changes. What this does is now whenever David makes an outbound call from his VoIP phones, this is the phone number that will display as his outbound caller ID versus the main number, the 512 number. Virtual text, you basically turn it on, you select the phone number on the account, main number, auto attendant number, or number directly assigned to the user. Click on Save Changes. When you do this, David gets an email welcoming him to virtual text, right? It gives him his login information and a link to download the app directly to his cell phone. Now, if this feature is not showing up on your account, then you need to contact our account services team, right? Account services at virtualpbx.com, because they need to go over SMS registration with you. Basically, this is a telecom, like industry-wide regulation now, essentially, where you have to go through registration process in order to be able to text properly. Voicemail box, by default, when you add a new user, right, they're going to have a voicemail box enabled. You can always turn it off if you want to. But this is the default settings for a voicemail box. So this is attach message to the email, right? So by default, the system's going to send an email to the user in question. It's going to have the date, the time, and phone numbers involved, the voicemail box number involved in the body of the email, and then there'll be an MP3 attachment. So they click on it and listen to it. Now, voicemails, or excuse me, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and cannot hold any more. And by default, there's 3 ways to listen to messages, but 2 ways to manage the messages. Right. So one way to listen to it is via email, right? But there's no way to manage it via email directly. However, your staff can call into their voicemail box, right? From a VoIP phone, right? Pick it up, dial *98. They're right into their voicemail box. They can listen to them. They can delete them there. From like a cell phone or landline, they'd have to call into your main number or any number that goes to a virtual receptionist. When they hear the main greeting, they can hit *97. That will then prompt the voicemail prompt to come up. So ask them for the voicemail box number and then the PIN number. Listen to it that way. Also, if you log into dash.virtualpbx.com, any person can get to their own user portal and check their voicemails via there. They can listen to them, download them, delete them, etc. Now, for any very busy voicemail box, right down here, you have this option here to delete messages after the notification email is sent. Right, so if you put a check mark here and then click on Save Changes, once the system sends that email out, saying, hey, you have a new voicemail, here's date to time, here's the attachment, the system automatically deletes the voicemail from the box, right? So it can't become full. All right, follow me. This is for people with multiple devices. When you click on this, you enable it, and now you have to tell the system which phones to ring. Right, so by default, everything starts off with do not ring. So if you enable this, save changes and leave, right, their phones won't ring. Calls will go to their voicemail. But you uncheck the ones you want to make use of. Now you have a little green bar here at the far right. You can click and drag this to the right to give each device a ring time. Now along the top here, you have timestamps, right? That end box is editable, right? So it defaults 120 seconds, 2 minutes. You can change that down to 60, for instance. You also have this option here to distribute. So now when I click on it, it distributes the total ring time between these 2 devices, right? So it always ring my soft phone first and then the web phone. I can still adjust these if I want to, right? If I want to change the order, I just click and drag and then click distribute again. I can even add the cell phone here, click manage. So now my cell phone's last. And because 20 seconds may not be enough, right? I may want to increase this over like that. And then click on save changes. One thing to know about the follow me setting, if the user is part of a group, calls from the group ignore the follow me setting, right? It rings all their devices. Fax box, you can choose to have users have their own fax box. You just click enable. Then you have this option here, use a spare number, buy a new number, or assign a new extension number. I recommend making use of a phone number, right? This gives that staff member maximum versatility. The main concerns with using just an extension number is, first and foremost, they're never going to be able to send a fax out. Right? The system uses their extension number as a caller ID when they send a fax out, and that fails. The other concern with an extension number is you might also limit who can send them a fax. Electronic fax services, at least the ones I've looked at so far, they don't have a provision for adding an extension number. They just let you put in a phone number and you send. Right? So sending to an extension can be problematic. Conference bridge. Click here to enable. That means this person will be able to host or moderate a conference. And then beyond that, you just need to put in a PIN number for the user and then click on Save Changes. One thing to know for this video conferencing option here, this is only for in-house, right? Anyone outside of your organization will not be able to make use of video. Additionally, This PIN number is something your staff members can edit on their own via their user portal. There's a conference tab there. Call forwarding, you have off, on, or failover mode. So off or on is something your staff members can do themselves. They would only really need to do this if they only have VoIP devices that, and then they're going to be away from their desk, so they want to send it to their cell phone. Right? For any staff member that has a cell phone as one of their ringing devices, you don't need call forwarding at all, right? Because it'll eventually get to their cell phone. Failover mode here, again, for staff members with VoIP phones, this is something you have to set up for them as a system admin. Basically, what it is designed for is if their VoIP phone goes offline for whatever reason, if you have a failover mode enabled, the system will see, oh, that VoIP phone's offline. Call comes into that user, it will automatically forward it to the number that you designate. Oops, right down here, right? +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then click on Save Changes. Customize call recording. When you first enable it, it looks like this, which means you're not recording anything, right? And you basically need to tell which kind of calls you want recorded. So inbound internal is, coworker Taylor called, right? Inbound external, customer Mary called. Outbound internal, right, means I called Dante, right? Coworker Dante. Whereas outbound external means I called customer Mary back. So, oops. We see something like this typically, right? The external ones enabled because that you want to record the customer related calls, or just every call, just so you have everything covered. Now, your account includes at least some amount of data storage as part of your monthly plan price. This can vary depending on the plan. If you have heavy call volume and you're recording every call, you're going to want to look at the AWS integration, right? So if you have an AWS account, you can link that to your Dash account, and you'd want to talk to our account services team. But basically, when you do that, you link the two accounts together, and you then store the call recordings on AWS, which again, for heavy volume, that's going to be more cost effective for you in the long run. Music on hold, you can choose to have your staff members have their own hold music. Right? You just click enable, and you either find a file that you've already have on the system, or you click upload to upload an MP3 or .wav file up to 1 megabyte in size. And then click on Save Changes. Do not disturb when you enable it, like so, and then click on Save Changes. That means calls to this user, right, don't ring their devices. It goes to voicemail. Right, that matches the D&D toggle at the top. Hot desking. This is a VoIP phone feature designed for a shared office environment or hybrid scheduling. First up, you need to give them a hot desk ID. So if you're using 4-digit extension numbers, I just say use that extension number as their hot desk ID. You can choose to require a PIN number or not, and then you click on Save Changes. So I come to the office on Tuesday, right? I sit down on desk number 2. I pick up the VoIP phone that's there. I hit *11. That turns hot desking on that phone. It will ask me for my hot desk ID number and then PIN number if that was required by the system admin. Once I'm done with that, the system will say calls will now be sent to this device, right? Rest of my workday. Any call that comes to my user will ring at the desk phone that I'm sitting at, number 2, right? At the end of my day, I pick up the phone, hit *12, turns off hot desking on the phone, I go home. Next time I come into the office, let's say it's Friday, sit down at desk number 7. Same thing, pick up the phone, *11, enter hot desk ID, calls now come to me at desk number 7. All right, so once you have users and they have devices, you probably next can set up groups, right? Groups are departments, sometimes referred to as hunt groups or ring groups. Up here at the top, you click Add Group. You need to give it a name and an extension number. And then you click and drag your staff members that you want to be in that group, right? Click and drag to the right, click on Create Group. Once a group is created, you can click on the name, right? So you can always change the name. And then here you have group call attempts, little arrows here to the far right, so you can increase or decrease that. And this is how many times the system will offer the call to the members of the group. If you make any changes, click on Save Changes, or if you don't need the group any longer, click on Delete Group. Now, to the right of the name is the members box, right? You click on that. This shows you the staff members who are assigned to the group and how you're ringing or how you're offering calls to them. In this case, this is ring all or blast ringing, meaning call comes in, it rings all three of these people at the same time, right? Whoever answers it gets the call. Now, that can be confusing, right? Depending on your office environment. Right? If Taylor, David, and Dante are in the same office, more than likely, they'll know who got the call, right? Let's say, so calls are ringing, say Taylor and David pick up at the same time, right? The system has to decide who gets the call. So let's say it offers it to Taylor. So Taylor helps the customer. David's going to get dead air, right? He's going to say, hello, thank you for calling, blah, blah, blah. Hello, hello. Right? So in a shared office environment, he might be able to hear that Taylor's on a call. So he's like, okay, not a big deal. If you have staff members working remotely, that might be harder to find, right? You might have to either have like confirm via Slack or an admin check via the call logs. Now, this setup is similar to the follow me settings under the user, right? You have timestamps across the top here, defaults to 120 seconds. You can change it to say 600, for example. And then again, I can click and drag. I can click distribute, click and drag again, change the order. Now, in this kind of setup, right, Dante is always offered the call first. It doesn't matter if he's on a call or not. The system will not skip him. Right. So in this instance, that's a long time for the second caller to wait on hold. So you might want to do something like so. Right. So that way they're not waiting quite as long before they're offered to David, and then you would do something like this. Now this is obviously an extreme timestamp setup. So here I set it back down to 120. And I can do something like that. Down here is where you can add more users. So let's say a particular group is getting busy for whatever reasons. You can just click here, add additional staff members by clicking on the box, click select. And it adds it to the front, but like I could add it, distribute, right? Or if I was already in blast ringing, I would just set them up as blast ringing as well. And then click on Save Changes. Groups can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. You would just click on Add Extension so they can have a second extension number. You can add phone numbers directly to a group, right? Just like we did under users, either add from spare or buy a new. Right? And again, and just like under users, a number that's added to a group is available 24/7. Right? So like if you wanted to have like emergency services number, etc., or even just an after hours support number, right? You could add it here. Then we got group features. So first up is ring back. So when a call comes into the group, right, rings your staff members' VoIP phones, or phones, excuse me, in general, right? When that ringing sound is, when that phone starts to ring, that ringing sound is piped back to your customers. Now, if you don't want that ring sound to be sent back to your customers, you can enable this feature here, and then you can upload a media file, right? .wav, .mp3, up to 1 megabyte, and that will play instead of that ringing sound. Now, when you do upload a file or select one that's already here, you want to make sure that the file length, right, how long it plays, matches your total ring time of the group. The system does not loop the file for you. And then click on Save Changes. Next action, to me, this is the most important feature of the groups. And it's, when you enable it, it's, if no one answers the call, what do you want the system to do with it? You have this pull down here, so you can send it back to your main menu, for example. You can choose another group. You can have it go to a specific device. You can go to a specific user. And the most common is, right, send a call to someone's voicemail box. And then click on Save Changes. Allow call forward. If you enable this, that means your staff members can make use of call forwarding. But again, if you have people with both cell phones and landlines, or both actually cell phones and say VoIP phones, you don't really need to make use of this. Right? It's only really useful if you have the only devices on the account are VoIP devices. Caller ID prepend. This is for your VoIP phone users. This allows you to add additional text or numbers that shows up as part of the caller ID of the inbound caller. Now, I usually recommend just making use of one of these, not both. just so one, the caller ID isn't hugely long. It's also less confusing. All right, so we've got groups, we've got users, we have devices. So now let's go to main number here. Up here at the top, you have your main company numbers. You can always add more numbers here if you need to. All right, you have the little gear icons. So you can set the caller ID, E911, or prepend. Then you have your office hours strategy. So new accounts, you default to 24-hour open office. You can choose to set up custom office hours by clicking on the little radio button here. And then for each day of the week that you're open, click on the checkbox in front of the day, and then set your open hours in 24-hour or military time. And then you also have the option here to say that you're closed for lunch at the same time of every day that you're open. And then click on Save Changes. Office holidays, if you're closed for holidays, put a check mark here. Once you do, you have this option down over here to the right. It says Add Holiday. You click on that. You have single day, date range, and advanced. So single day, like I have here for Christmas Day, right? You give it a name, you choose the month and the date, and then you click Save Changes. Date range is like I have here for holiday. Again, give it a name, the start date and the end date, and Save Changes. And then advanced is like I have here for Memorial Day. Right? Give it a name. I choose the month. This should be May. And then the second pull down, you have first through fifth as well as last. And then you choose the day of the week. And then you click Save Changes. If you need to remove a holiday, just click on the little trash icon at the far right, and then click on Save Changes. And then we have incoming call handling. So for those two main numbers, how do I want my system to handle calls during my open hours, during my after hours, or my holidays? Right, so I have three separate tabs for those times of day. You have these same three basic options. So first option, call comes in, goes to my virtual receptionist. This is a link. You can click on it. It's going to open up a big box. So on the left, you have your main menu. All right, so this is what people would press on their phone to navigate through your phone system. You would click here on Add Route to create a new row. You have 0 through 9, the star key, and the default action to make use of. And then the second pull down is where do you want that button press to go? All right, so you can go to the PBX directory. You can set it to a specific user, right? Press 0 to speak to David. All right. Then you come down, you have call queues. If you're making use of the call center, your call queues would be a menu option. Any of your groups you've added would be a menu option here. Any devices, media files, and voicemail boxes. Now, once you have your location set, actually, let's change this to, then over here on the right, you have your greetings, your greeting options. First up is text-to-speech. You type in what you want the system to say. It will repeat it back to the inbound caller in a computerized or robotic voice. Right, now, you have up to 250 characters that you can type in. It does not count spaces, but 250 characters is the most consistently working one. I've sometimes gotten beyond that, but 250 has worked every time. So obviously that limits you in terms of what you can say. This is good for if you're just getting started out, whether it's a small business or you've never used a PBX system, right? Just to get an idea of how you want calls to flow. Unfortunately, the system names the file for you, right? So in this case, it's going to name it main open hours menu TTS, right? Because we're in my open hours, right? This is my main menu, and it's text to speech. Like if I was looking at my after hours, it'd be main after hours menu TTS. Also, as soon as you make an edit here, it would save a second file. So now you have two files called main open hours menu TTS. So if you make use of a TTS file, I suggest after you click update, save, and save changes. All right, this would close over here on the left under greetings. Find that file, right? Click on the little edit icon here and change it to something that is more easily recognizable. Right? So that way you can switch between greetings as needed. Otherwise, because basically usually when you have an option to change a greeting, right, it's just a pull down menu. So you only see the file name. So having 5 files called main open hours menu TTS, not very helpful. So you'd want to change it to something you can recognize. You can upload your own file, right? .wav, .mp3, up to 1 megabyte in size. Just click on choose file, find it on your computer, click update, save, and save changes. You can choose from an existing recording. This pull down will show all your media files on the account. Right? So hold music files, main greeting files, voicemail greeting files. So that's why you want to have names that you can recognize what is what. You can record it over the phone. Now, when the system says pick up a phone, register to this account, it means a VoIP phone. Right? So if you have a VoIP phone handy, you can pick it up, dial in, and enter in the PIN number and record a greeting over the phone. That's a security feature of the system. However, if you want to call in with a cell phone or landline, or let's say you have a friend who's got that great radio voice. So what you would want to do in that case, right, under settings, where it says allow outside recording, turn that on, right, then save and save changes. So now you can call in from your, say, your cell phone. You call in to your main number, you enter this PIN number, and then it walks you through recording a greeting over the phone. Now, if you just started with this, right, and you don't have a greeting in place, if you called your main number right off the bat, it's going to tell you that the greeting for this menu has not been recorded yet and prompt you to enter the PIN number. If you have a greeting in place, let's say you have a text-to-speech greeting, when the greeting starts to play, you can still enter the PIN number. The system will switch into recording mode and then walk you through recording the greeting over the phone. In that scenario, the system overwrites the file, right? It doesn't change the name, right? So you would have a main open menus TTS, but that's actually a recording, not a text-to-speech greeting. And that typically becomes more of an issue as we get closer to the holiday season, because some people lose track of time and try to record a greeting quickly over the phone, and they lose the main greeting that they use for most of the year. Professional recording services, when you click order here, this opens up a new tab and takes you to Snap Recordings, where you can use them to order a professionally done recording. They bill you directly, typically via credit card. They email you the file, so then you would come up to upload your own file and then click update and save changes. So under settings, number of retries on missed dial is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake. Right? So I think it defaults to 5 or something like that. But this one is set to 1, which means they can make 2 total attempts, right? They get 1 mistake. So caller calls in, they press 5. The system will wait a little while and then repeat the greeting and let them enter in another option. So let's say they hit 2 the second time, then they'll get routed to that support group. Dialing timeout is how much time the system waits after it hears that first button press before it assumes they're done. Right? So customer calls in and they press 7. The system will wait for 5 seconds in this case, and then, oh, you meant menu option 7, which doesn't exist, and there's no extension number 7. In that scenario, the system would then say we don't recognize your entry, and then play the greeting again, right? Because they get 1 attempt, or they get 2 total attempts. They call in, and so on that second attempt, they hit 7 again. The system will wait 5 seconds, and then it will still say we don't recognize your entry, and either say goodbye if there's no default action, right? Or if I add the default action back in, it will send them to that default action and wherever it goes. All right, next up, allow outside recording, allow dialing extensions, excuse me. By default, this is on. And this just means if the inbound caller enters a valid extension number, the system will transfer the call. Right? If I turn this off, that means the inbound caller can only press these menu options. Even if they enter in a correct extension number, the system will treat it as invalid. And then they suppress the playing of invalid entry. So if you don't want that message saying we did not recognize your entry to play, right, you would turn this on. That suppresses that message. Right? So for instance, if you had a default action go to a specific person or group, right, on that last attempt, on that last failed attempt, the system would say transfer in your call and then send it to that destination. All right, so any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings or your settings, you want to click save here, and then save changes here under incoming call handling, right? You're clicking save twice. All right, second option here is the live operator answer option, right? Basically, this first pull down is designed so you can send calls to a user, a group, or a queue. So someone has a chance to answer the call, or several people in terms of groups or queues. If they're not able to answer, then it sends them to the virtual receptionist. Now, this is my after hours virtual receptionist, so I have different menu options. I likely have a different greeting. I may even have different settings. And then lastly, the option here, right now I have it skipped to voicemail, so I'm sending it straight to this voicemail box, but it's a pull down. So I can send, offer it to send it calls to the user first, a group, a media file, etc., whatever I choose. But if that person or location doesn't pick up that call, right, after it's done with that attempt, it then sends it to this voicemail box I selected. Right, your main conference number, you can have multiple, right? So you can add from spare or buy new. Again, this is the phone number everyone dials to reach your conference rooms. You can do a custom greeting, but it's text-to-speech, right? But you click enable, you type it in, get 250 character max, and then click on save, and you're done. Even without the custom greeting in place, the system says, welcome to the conference, and then prompts the caller to enter the conference room number and the PIN number. The main fax box number, you can only have the one main fax box number, but once you've assigned one, you have an option here to edit the fax box. Inbound notification, right? This is designed to put in an email address here. And whenever a fax comes in, this is the email that gets, or email address that gets sent an email saying, you have a new fax, right? Here's the date, the time, the phone numbers involved, and then a PDF attachment. Now, what can also happen is if someone dials your main fax box number, let's say from their cell phone, right? So they hear fax tones, they hang up. This person, Rose, in this case, was getting an email saying that there was a failed inbound fax attempt, right? The system still has the caller ID information. So sometimes it will say, give you the phone number and say wireless number. That's a dead giveaway saying, hey, someone misdialed the number. You don't have to worry about it. But beyond that, you'd want to double check with whoever's sending you a fax about what happened on their side. Email permissions. This is designed to put your company email domain here. And once you do so, anyone at your company, right, that has an email with the proper domain, they can send a fax out via the Dash system without actually having to be a user on your Dash account, right? So like if you have an intern whose job is, hey, you're sending faxes out to these numbers on this day, they don't have to be a user on your Dash account. You can just say, hey, here's the format, just send an email out. All right, auto attendance. This is a plan-specific feature, meaning it's on some plans and not others. And auto attendants are designed to give you secondary attendance. So the two, or the most common use cases we run into are for submenuing. So like you want people to call your main number, and then the greeting says, for English, press 1, for Spanish, press 2, right? And that probably repeats that message in Spanish. Well, then you would come here under auto attendance and click on create attendant, give it a name, give it an extension number, click on create attendant, and then you would have one for English and for Spanish, like I have here. So that way, when people, so they press 1 for English, right? So they come to the English attendant, and I go under settings, excuse me. All right, so it comes to my virtual receptionist. I click virtual receptionist. I would have an English greeting, and the menu options would go to my English-speaking staff members. Right. Likewise, under my Spanish attendant, it would have a Spanish greeting going to my Spanish-speaking staff members. Now, the other option, or the other scenario we see is what's for multiple businesses, right? So you have multiple businesses on the same account. They have their own phone number. They have their own main greetings. But you can set route calls to the same staff people among your multiple businesses. So in the case of submenuing, when you click on the name, you want to say like this. Say it's available in main menu. Click on Save Changes. Right. So now these are menu options that you can hit from your virtual receptionist, or even as a next action from your groups. Whereas for a standalone attendant or secondary business, you'd want to leave it as unavailable in main menu. You can add a phone number, right? Add from spare or buy new, which would make sense for a separate business. And then under the settings, click edit, right? These hours of operation are the same ones we set up under the main number. right? But the virtual receptionist, again, they would have their own greetings and their own menu options. Just going to set these back to where they were. Oops. Helps to make the change. All right, devices. This shows your devices in use or that you've created. Green device means it's registered, so we can send calls to it. Red, unregistered, so we can't send calls to it, right? So in the case of, like, this is a web phone, right? So this just probably means they haven't logged into the web phone device, right? If it was a physical device, like I have here for this Yealink phone, that's probably because they haven't plugged it in, or they might be having a network issue. If at any time you can also click off or click where it says on enable, that turns it black, right? So that would be one of those, that unregistered device at the front page. You can add devices here, right? So phone, cell phone, etc. The main thing is, again, for the soft phone, when you add a soft phone device on the devices tab, it's only letting you do a third-party application. You cannot make it a VirtualPBX soft phone, right? You have to do that directly to the user. Again, under settings, audio. For the VirtualPBX soft phone, you want to make sure that the codec selected over here is Opus, like it is here. So you may have to click and drag it over to make it appropriate. For physical phones, whether it's the soft phone or like it is here for the Yealink, you would want that audio to be this G711A and G711U. And again, this is also where you would set up alternate E911s for your staff members or assign it to their white phones. Excuse me. All right, greetings. This shows all your media files on the account, right? So main greetings, voicemail greetings, hold music files, or ringback files. Up here at the top, you can add a new file. Right? You can give it a name, click on browse to find it, upload a .wav.mp3 up to 1 megabyte. For an existing file, right, you've got the name, right? So like I have here, a main open hours menu. Under source, you're going to see TTS for text to speech, right? Upload for an uploaded file, and a recording means it was recorded over the phone. This column here allows you to play back the media file directly in your browser. If for some reason that doesn't work, to the right, you have a download, right? So you can download that file to your device and use your device's media player to listen to it. And then you have the option here on the wrench icon. This is where you can change the file name, or if you don't need it any longer, click on delete to remove the file completely. All right, next up is numbers. Starts off on numbers in use, which means the numbers that you're currently using. Shows you where they're located. You got the little gear icon here so you can update the caller ID, E911, and prepend for all your numbers. Spare numbers, these are numbers you're not currently using. So once you've unassigned a number, it becomes a spare number. And you can come here, put a check mark in front of it, and now I have this option to delete. Actually, here, let's get rid of that one as well. All right, so you click on delete. It says, are you sure you want to do that? You confirm the deletion, and it confirms that those are deleted, and now I have less numbers on my account. You can still buy numbers here, right? Local or toll free, so they would just add it as additional spare numbers. Port actually starts the port process. Click on new port request, excuse me. Give it a name, choose local or toll free, click next. Now the system wants you to upload a copy of your bill in PDF dated within 30 days. Basically, you just need to follow the on-screen instructions. You're gonna have to fill out a form. That's gonna give you an opportunity to download a blank LOA or letter of agency, as well as upload a completed and signed LOA. Now, the information on the LOA and on part of that form is gonna match, right? In terms of like the company name, the address that your current carrier has on file for you. That form is gonna also ask you for a BTN or billing telephone number, excuse me. If you're only porting one number, the billing telephone number is the number you're porting. Right? If you're porting multiple, then you need to confirm with your carrier what the billing telephone number is. Some carriers do require a PIN number to port out. We most commonly see this with Canadian phone numbers as well as cell phones, cell phone numbers, I should say. If you're porting a cell phone number to us, just be aware of once that port completes, the cell phone in question will stop functioning, right? Because the phone number is now on your Dash account, so calls will then route through your system, right? So if you still wanted calls to ring on your cell phone, you would either A, not want to port, or B, make sure you get a new phone number from your current carrier. As far as the LOA is concerned, right, the information should match what your carrier has on file. It does need a signature. Right? A digital signature is fine, or you can, download the file, print it out, sign it, and scan it back in. Right? But typing your name in twice or printing your name twice gets rejected every time. If we see it, we tell you, hey, we need a signed version of it, because anytime we've tried it without an actual signature, it gets rejected, and that just delays when your port's going to complete. Voicemail boxes. This shows all your voicemail boxes on the account. If there's an entry here under that third column, another user, that means it was created when the user was created. You typically do not want to delete these voicemail boxes unless you're also deleting the user, because you can't. Let's say you deleted the voicemail box for MJ here, right? And then, oh wait, I didn't mean to do that. Well, when you create a new voicemail box up here at the top, right? You give it a name, voicemail box number, PIN number, click on create. There's no way to tie it to a user. It doesn't let you assign it. So you'd actually have to then go back and delete MJ's user and recreate him again. Now, once you create a voicemail box, right, this basic information here, this is what you would use to check voicemails over the phone, as well as change the greeting over the phone, right? Because you would need the voicemail box number and the PIN number. Under advanced greeting media, this is where you can upload a file, right? So you can upload it here or choose from an existing file that's on the account. If you have something selected under temporary, it plays, right? So if you have something selected under both media and temporary, the temporary file plays, not the media file. The media file won't play again until you set temporary back to none. Right? But again, you can upload a file here directly here as well. Then recipients, your user voicemail boxes already have a built-in recipient at the email address used for login. But here you can add additional voicemail or additional recipients to a user voicemail box, or any voicemail box you created on this page, you'd want to add at least one recipient, right? So someone gets an email letting them know, hey, voicemail box, you got a new voicemail. You can keep clicking add to add more people. And then once you're done, click on save changes. And then options. So once a voicemail box has recipients and a media file, you can click on already set up, right? Because there's nothing else that needs to be done to it. You may have to uncheck this to change the media file over the phone. And then the other thing to double check is to make sure that you have the attached messages to email. And in the case of this voicemail box is for my support team, right? I would probably want to delete after notification, because I don't want that voicemail box to ever become full, right? Because that would be a little disconcerting for my customers. Text forward, again, this is an add-on feature. This allows you to have numbers texted to one of your numbers and then emailed to you or sent via webhook to your destination. So you at least see what the messages are. So up here at the top, you click on add number. You click a phone number that's on your account, and then you choose either to enter in an email address or a specific webhook. You can do one or the other, not both. The easiest one is obvious, is just put in an email address here and then click on create text forward. So now whenever someone texts this phone number, this email address gets an email saying, hey, you have a text, here's the message body, right? You don't have a way to reply back to it, but at least you got the message. Call logs, this shows your call history on the account. Little green arrow to the right, that's a call that's coming into the system. If you click on it, it expands out. So this first line, that's the call coming into the system. The second line is, or the second row, this is a call going from the system to the device. So here I see it was going to this particular cell phone, and that the user was busy, and that's why they didn't pick up. Right, if I scroll further down, here's an outbound call. right? And it's only going to have the one line typically. And it's showing here, this device is what was made calling out to this phone number, and it ended normally, right? They spoke for the total time was, what, 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Now, little fire extinguisher icon here, this creates an email for you, pre-addressed to support@virtualpbx.com. It will have the technical details. Please include the context of why you're sending it. We're not always going to know why you're sending a call log information to us, right? Generally speaking, you want to see normal clearing, right? That tells you the call ended normally. But when you see this, right, in the details here, that lets us know that this most likely had a network problem. But in some of our call logs, we're not always going to have it. It's going to be like normal clearing all the way through. Like, for instance, if you had an audio problem, it's going to just show up as normal clearing. So that's why we would want the context in the email that you send to us. You have today, you have this week, right? Goes back for the current week, the current month, as well as custom, right? So then you can enter in the dates that you want. So you can go to the previous month, for example, and then filter. All of those options had an option to download. It just downloads it as a CSV file. So if you're good with spreadsheets, you can get more information out of the call log. The system will let you go back up to 12 months. If you have to go back further than that, you need to contact our support team. We have to create an escalation for you. Our engineers can go back up to 18 months total, right? So 6 more months. After that, the data is not available. So if you need your call log information for some sort of compliance reasons, I would strongly advise that you do so on a regular basis, like once a month. Feature codes, I've talked about a couple of these as we talked about features. And the feature codes, all they are ways for your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their phone. Now, this information is not only here in your dashboard, it's also a page under our support pages. Also under our support pages, there's a PDF document called the Phone Commands Cheat Sheet, which has the feature code, but it also has the context help information. All right, so that's the dashboard. So next up, we have blacklists. This allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you are blocking from reaching your system. So you click Edit Blacklists. You click Add to create a new list, although you only really need one. So if you have an existing list, you just click on that to show it here. It does need a name. And then first up, you have to choose, are you blocking anonymous calls or not? By default, this is off, meaning if we get a phone number or call comes in, but we're not getting valid caller ID information, right, it's going to come through. If you turn that on, that call that doesn't have the valid caller ID information gets blocked. They get a busy tone. Down here, all right, list of numbers. Just click Add Number. You put +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. Click Add to add the next number, and again until you're done. Once you're done, click on Save. Click on Back to Settings up here towards the top right. And then over here on the right-hand side, under Selected, you make sure your list is on the right-hand side, right? If for some reason it's under Available, you just need to click and drag and move it over. In either case, right, if once it's on the right-hand side or if it's already there, just click Update. So that way your changes are saved and those numbers can no longer reach your system. Call recording, this opens up, This opens up a new tab, takes you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. You'll need to log into that page using your Dash login information, but there you can view your call recordings, play them back, download them, delete them, etc. Monitor is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of your users. Right? Doesn't matter what phone they're using. Call comes into it, came in through the system, right? And let's say they answered with their cell phone, it would show up here under busy, right? They would have like a little blue box with the person's name. Doesn't matter, again, what devices you have. You can view by users or devices, see who go all available or busy for both of those. Kind of hard to read, but over here on the left, active inbound calls. Each active inbound call would have a little blue box and telling you who they're speaking to among your staff. And then part calls, if anyone made use of the parking code feature, the call, the phone number and the parking space number would be listed here. right? So that way you can pick it up. Reports, this opens up a new tab and takes you to reports.virtualpbx.com. It has its own login information. The reports allows you to, it's advanced reporting, allows you to create your own reports. If you go into our show notes, you'll see a link there for the advanced reporting demo that will show you some of the things that can be done with the advanced reporting. If this is something you're interested in, you definitely want to talk to our account services team to make sure it's available to you, or if you need to change plans, and then they'll get enabled. Now, once it's been enabled, it's a couple step process, but once it's all enabled, then from that point forward, the data will be there, right? Anything before the time you get it enabled won't show up in the reports. Voicemails, this takes you to your voicemail box manager. You can get to any voicemail box on the account as a system admin, right? And you can see the voicemails that are coming through, right? You see that they're new. You have the date and the time, phone numbers involved, the duration of the call. You can listen to the message by clicking on the play icon. You can download it. If you put a check mark in front of a message, as an admin, you can move it to a different voicemail box. So I can move this one to my support box, for instance. Likewise, if I have a check mark here, I can change its status, right? So I can mark it for deletion, etc. Integration AWS, this is a plan-specific feature, but this allows you to link your Dash account with your AWS account. In fact, if I can see here, this is basically most of this information you're getting from AWS. And then you have to configure the AWS side to get your information stored there. This is probably for call recordings. And in fact, let's see here. So here, since this account was set up with AWS, when I view my call recordings, instead I'm shaken here, and this is the information that is on my AWS account, so I can download the file, etc. All right, call center. Oops. This opens a new tab and takes you to callcenter.virtualpbx.com. This are call queues. All right. So if you've ever called your bank and waited on hold and said your call will be answered by the next available agent, that means on the caller side you were in a CD queue or call center queue. This is an add-on to existing plans, so there's usually a per queue fee. If you're interested in this, in the show notes, you want to look at the ACD Queues Pro demo. That will show you what the call center is about, and then you can talk to our account services team about what it costs for you to add. The queues are a more advanced feature of groups, right? So like how I mentioned, when calls come in, if you have it staggered, right, going in order, it always rings that first person first, no matter if they're on a call or not. In queues, right, the system says, oh, you're on a call, just instantly directs it to the next available person, right? So it minimizes the hold time for that inbound caller. Also within queues, your staff members can log themselves in and out of the queue, as well as mark themselves away, like when they go to lunch, right? Which is not something they can do in groups other than using the D&D toggle. Also within the call center, a manager in a queue can eavesdrop on a call, right? Whisper, or even barge in to help staff members out. Dynamic caller ID, this is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change the outbound caller ID that your VoIP phones display. So we'll click edit here on this first one. So here, right, you need to give a name. You choose a phone number that's on your account. In this case, I chose the 702 number. And what I've said here is whenever my VoIP phone users dial area code 702, the system will automatically change the outbound caller ID to this 702 number on my account, right? So that way, to the people I'm calling, it looks like a local call, right? And then I would click on Save Changes. The other thing you can do is create a feature code. So in this instance, when my staff members dial *951, the system, and then they enter the phone number, area code and phone number they're reaching out to, the system will change the outbound caller ID to this 408 number that I've already selected. Faxes, this takes you to your fax manager. Right? You can get to any fax box on your account, whether they're your main one or your user voice or user fax boxes. Here you see the phone number, the date and time, phone numbers involved, number of pages. You can download the file. You can click here to remove faxes from your system. Outbound fax tab. Again, you get to any fax box on the account. Any failure you see here is we had a problem with the other phone number, right? So the system processed the request, sent it out, and ran into a problem. And this one, in case they're saying we had a connection initially, but then it didn't give us a proper tones afterwards, so it ended the fax. I think this is the same thing. All right, sometimes you'll see something like user busy, meaning we got a busy number. The system will retry the fax automatically 3 times, right? So once you send the email off, you're gonna have to wait a little bit before you get that confirmation email letting you know that the fax went through or not. Under email to fax logs, right? Thumbs down means the system had a problem processing this request. You see the email address involved and the on both sides, so you can tell if it's like if someone has their like Gmail account here, like, oh, you used the wrong email address, that's why it failed, right? Or they may have had the incorrect format. But you can also click on this little eyeball icon here at the far right, and here under errors, it says no valid attachment, right? So this could be someone forgot to attach a file completely, right? Or they chose something other than a PDF or a TIFF file, right? So they sent a JPEG. Number Manager, this takes you back to your spare numbers page. Webhooks is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create webhooks that basically connect Dash to other software. So here, you can create a new hook. This is some level of programming. But basically you fill out the form, click on create webhook. You need something else on the other side to link it to. Now, if I go back to this active one here, cancel. So this one here, this is a hook that's going to Zapier, right? If you go under our show notes, you should see a link, the introduction to Zapier webinar, which covers Zapier itself as well as some webhooks. You can also go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see what we've done in terms of code and linking Dash to other software, like Slack, for instance. You'd actually want to talk to our sales team about webhooks if you're interested in this. And again, look at the show notes for that demo to get an idea of what can be done. And then lastly, we have the user portal. So every staff member that's a user on your Dash account has access to their own user portal, right? So here they can listen to their voicemails, right? They can play it back, they can download it, put a check mark, and they can change its status. Right, call history, they can view their own call history, and they can change the date range. The fax tab, this only works for users that have their own fax box, but they can see their fax history here. The contact list is everything on your Dash account, right? Other staff members, auto attendants, groups, etc. Basically, it helps your staff members to transfer calls. This is not something they can add to or remove on their own, right? This is just what's on the Dash account. The conference tab, I can click on it. Here we go. Right, this is your conference information. It only shows up for users that you've enabled the conference feature on. Over here on the right, this is where they adjust the moderator pin, and then down below that, the participant pin number. You typically want them to be different. And that for the participant pin number, that's something you would have to email to the people who are joining your conference. Here are your options to have people who join the conference start off muted or deafened, as well as are you playing entry and exit tones down here. While in a conference, if you're on this page, the plus icon lets you invite other Dash users to your conference, right? Lock, so you can lock it so no one else can join. You can mute everybody, you can unmute everybody, you can end the conference call. Also, while on a conference, each moderator and participant has their own little box, so you can mute a specific person or kick out a specific person. And then settings and devices, right here is where your staff members can enable call forwarding on their own. Right? They choose the device, put +1 area code and phone number, save changes. And once they do save changes, now they're forwarding calls. Right? Once they're done, Right, they're back at the office. They uncheck that, click save, and now they're back to normal. And that is everything. I haven't seen any questions pop up. So I'll go ahead and end the training. We'll be back again next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Again, this is recorded, so you can always come back and view this later if you need to or share with other people. Beyond that, I thank you for your time today, and I hope you have a